Thank you very much for the introduction, Cheryl and Dan, and thank you, Tech Valley, for having me. Thanks to all the attendees for being here. What I basically want to do is have a conversation to have a conversation, which is to say, share my experiences over the past couple months, because I think they're, it might be instructive to other people who are looking to meet new people in the capital region, and then help people issue spot some different legal solutions and legal pitfalls, to the extent that we at the Towne Law Firm or other lawyers in the capital region can be of service to you guys. So first, a little bit of background on who I am. I grew up in northern New Jersey, went to college outside of Philly, studied philosophy, spent a summer in China at a Buddhist monastery, went to law school in Virginia, studied business and emerging markets, practiced real estate law downstate in Manhattan, worked on a number of very large transactions, fell in love with real estate there, but my work lacked a human element to it. So I exited and started a real estate investment company. Simultaneous to that, I was introduced to the capital region. One of my oldest childhood friends is Governor Cuomo's capital region director. And kind of a casual weekend visit to him turned into me moving here, and me wanting to invest in 2 buildings in downtown Troy. Long story short, because of COVID, the investment went sideways. And I kind of made a very conscious decision to move here regardless, and to try to leverage the relationships that I had built and the local market knowledge that I had built into something, right? And I was trying to figure out what next steps to take. And I ended up at, deciding to join the Towne Law Firm. We're in Western Albany. We're a little bit of a startup ourselves. Our founder and some folks who have been there for some time are, very experienced in their respective areas of law. And they've made a conscious decision to expand now. I've been brought on to kind of offer our service to small businesses in Troy and the capital region in general. So that's my background. In terms of more specifically what I want to talk about today, I'm going to talk about the phrase super connector, kind of what it means, and how we can all be super connectors, how you guys can add value to your communities in COVID, and how the Towne Law Firm can add value to you guys. So connecting literally means to bind together, right? A connector is something that links different people and different ideas. One of the amazing things about this area is the extent to which there are people and businesses and organizations that all trying to connect with one another. And it's not just about this area. So there's a thing called 6 degrees of separation, which basically posits that we're all 6 people removed at maximum from everybody in the entire globe. I think technically it's more like 7 or 8, but the substance of the thought is kind of incredible in of itself, right? That less the number of fingers that we have on both of our hands. That's kind of how accessible everyone on the earth is to one another. And so being a super connector is really about activating that connection, right? Being kind of a conduit, a channel, a facilitator of all those different people and the different ideas that they have and the things that they're trying to do. One of the points I would like to make is that Dan kind of made a joke about nerds needing to connect more. I consider myself a nerd, and I actually struggled with social anxiety for a significant period of my life, and it still comes up, but it's really not something that I have to deal with on a daily basis anymore. And the way that personally I was able to overcome that is just through practice. When I was in law school, the job that I wanted to get, I knew that I needed to do a ton of different interviews to kind of place myself well out of law school. And so I literally, went to New York City and just interviewed for 2 weeks straight. Um, and that kind of, was the first domino, you could say, that knocked into a series of dominoes. And then I kind of repeated the process when my real estate investment went sideways, and I was in Troy, but I didn't really know kind of what step to take next. And it's just about practice. So the point there is that anybody and everybody can do what it is that I'm talking about right now. Two follow-up points on that. I just say kind of be patient with it as we kind of get into specific tips for networking. Just be patient with yourself. It's about making small steps. If you also, for example, have social anxiety, be proud of yourself for putting yourself there and making a single connection in a single day. If you don't have social anxiety and you have are kind of an established network already, maybe kind of put yourself out there and try to do a talk or join a community, a great community organization like Tech Valley, right? It's about kind of small steps, and at the end of the day, that creates one big step. In terms of kind of how networking adds value to your own operations, it's a little bit of a kind of two-step process, right? I think the focus is figuring out your own story, being true to it, and then seeing how your story can add value to people that are around you, and really focus on that, right? Don't focus on what it is that you're going to get out of putting yourself out in the world and connecting person A with person B, or idea A to idea B. And there's kind of a faith element to it, right? Where you focus on other people and what you can add to other people. And you kind of, at the end of the day, naturally benefit from that, right? Because at the end of the day, if you've connected two different people with one another and that's beneficial to their businesses, they're going to come back to you. And they're going to ask you to make connections for them again, or to ask your opinion or advice on things. And the idea is that at the end of the day, right, what you're putting out into the world, what you're putting out into your own network, comes back to you and of itself, if not tenfold. So I guess some kind of specific, more concrete tips for networking. And I'll kind of share my own experiences here. Again, not because my experience is special, but actually it's the exact opposite of that, right? It's not special. Again, everyone can do it. So having an online presence is great, right? Utilizing LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, kind of really cultivating an online presence and then reaching out to people through those platforms. And I think membership is really important. Again, joining organizations like Tech Valley, and I mean, there's just a large number of organizations like Tech Valley in the area. That's one of the amazing things about it. Once you kind of get the ball rolling in terms of connecting people, I think it can be a little bit too easy to collect people instead of connecting with them, right? It's not just about kind of adding somebody on LinkedIn. It's about learning who they are, kind of what makes them tick, what they want to accomplish. And so I think connecting with people in that regard is more important than just collecting people, right? It's about kind of quality over quantity. Just a phrase I'd like to share with you guys that I really like. So someone once said, "A river cuts through rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence." Right? The reason why the Grand Canyon exists isn't because in of itself in a single moment water is super powerful. It's because the water kind of runs through the rock persistently, repeatedly over time, and that's how it makes its impact. Which is to say, if you reach out to somebody and you really want to connect with them and they don't get back to you, give it a week or so, follow up with them. And if you've reached out 2-3 times, they don't get back to you, that's okay, move on. Again, there's a faith element where we kind of are confident in the process. And it's less about individual connections and more about the mindset that goes into wanting to make those individual connections. again, right, lots of little steps equals one big step. So to get into kind of networking in the capital region in COVID, just kind of a general word that I'd like to say on COVID. Obviously it's incredibly difficult for literally everyone, right? Everyone has been affected by this, myself included. 2 members of my family, we lost to COVID. My real estate investment went sideways because of COVID, right? I get that it's difficult. But something I like to say is pressure makes diamonds, right? It's kind of in the hardest moments of our lives that we figure out who we are, what we have to add to our community. And, you kind of either capitalize on it and you execute it, or it doesn't happen and it's not for you, right? So this is absolutely a test that we're kind of all in right now, but we're in it together. And I think coming together as we are right now is a testament to the fact that we're in a strong community that's going to be able to get through this. And not only is it about kind of just making it through, but in a way, COVID's an opportunity. I think one of the most important things about owning and operating a startup or a small business is timing. There are lots of great ideas that entirely flopped because timing wasn't right. And COVID is kind of a slap in the face, a wake-up call in a way in regards to timing, in that it's very clear, I think, what communities need in terms of, for example, personal protective equipment, which kind of directly addresses a problem posed by COVID, or light bulbs that sanitize emergency rooms or warehouses, right? But then there's kind of another aspect too, where it's the fact that we're all kind of struggling together. Certain types of leisure and entertainment are especially important, right? And so to the extent that you can figure out kind of who you are, what your business is, and then how you can scratch an itch that is kind of, I think that at the end of the day is helpful for your community and for you. Just to share a quick story about a friend of mine. So he was in the process of coming up with enterprise software for the automotive industry. COVID hit, he lost his job. The enterprise software was going to take 1 or 2 years to produce. And so he used his expertise in engineering to come up with a mask design that he's in the process of patenting. And his idea is that he's going to kind of run with this mask idea for a year or two, and then use the funds from that to bankroll his automotive enterprise software idea. I share that because I think that type of nimbleness is really important, right? Code doesn't have to be about kind of, doing a 180. It's a pivot, and a pivot's different than a 180, right? It's kind of, life gives you lemons, make lemonade, right? You don't just need to entirely change your approach. Things that, I think are beneficial in terms of networking in COVID, things that you have to do extra of. I think it's helpful to be extra targeted. Kind of in normal times, we might have the luxury of taking our time networking and, taking advantage of happenstance. If you're in a position like I was in, where, you've moved to a new city and the rub was, right, I basically didn't have a job, there isn't the luxury to take your time with it. And so it's really important to figure out kind of where you want to be, right? So instead of joining 10 organizations, right, maybe join 1 or 2 that are directly applicable to your business and really focus on penetrating those organizations. I think it's important to be unique. Again, this goes back to your story, right? Who you are as a person. It's pretty easy to identify a canned response, right? You get messaged on LinkedIn. It's hey, I'm so and so, would love to talk to you about the services I provide. Thank you for considering. There's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't really stand out, right? So I think instead of kind of whitewashing or sanitizing who you are and your message, celebrate what makes you unique and figure out how to communicate that in a short period of time or a short space, right? The elevator pitch is never going to go away, right? You can't, I mean, you're literally limited to a character limit when you're messaging someone on LinkedIn. So the elevator pitch is always going to be there. But the point of what I'm trying to communicate right now is make that elevator pitch yours. Um, and then I think it's just especially important to be caring right now, right? The whole point of this presentation and of kind of the type of networking I'm talking about is that it's about other people. It's about the people in your network, and it ends up coming back to you. And that's especially important right now because this is a very difficult time that we're in. A last point on networking. So it doesn't always have to be about kind of immediately adding value to others. One of the things that you can do, kind of a sneaky tip, is to just ask for help. Because what that does is when you ask somebody else for help, right, they're basically doing for you what you've done for, if not them, other people. And then they're going to be invested in the result of that, right? They've taken time out of their day to help you with kind of whatever problem you have or solution you're looking for. And then they know you as a person and you know them. Um, the kind of last part of this presentation is going to be about kind of generally what services the Towne Law Firm can provide to you guys and people like you. It's less about specifics, right? Some of the people here are kind of already very familiar with patent law. Other people here may not even know what that is, and that's okay, right? One of the things that we do is we love having initial conversations with people, right? So the idea is to kind of get your brains turning in terms of what legal solutions you need, and then encouraging you to reach out either to us or people like us to kind of accomplish your legal goals. So I think it's important to have a real attorney that you trust, which is to say, LegalZoom is great if you have a quick question. But at the end of the day, there's no replacement for a living, breathing human being that's going to be, there for you at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night or in the middle of, Saturday, either because there's a problem that needs addressing or, that attorney's kind of been there for you along the ride and you've achieved something great and you guys want to celebrate it together. That being said, I think kind of the rise of LegalZoom and other platforms that utilize artificial intelligence to provide legal services, if it's not a good thing for the legal industry right now, I think it will be in the near future, right? We lawyers are being forced to innovate because of it. We're being forced to kind of step up our game, and I think that's a good thing. As you kind of reach out to lawyers and create relationships with lawyers, I think it's really important to insist on getting a good value. So that means transparent billing, right? It's not kind of, you don't know, you get a massive bill at the end of the month and you don't know what it's for. It's kind of the interacting with a lawyer who's been in your shoes, right? A real estate investment company, it sounds kind of sexy, but I wasn't making a salary for a year. We had two offices. One was our office in Manhattan, which was my partner's existing office for his kind of already successful real estate company. And then our local office, as we called it in New Jersey, which was my childhood bedroom, right? So, again, it doesn't have to be me, right? That's not the point. The point is, as you guys, engage with lawyers, I want you to be engaging with people who kind of understands what it means to have a bottom line, understands what it means to either you have a day job and you have a family and you're dead tired at the end of the day, but this is your passion and you still want to do it, or you're kind of pushing everything to the side and giving yourself entirely to this. You want a lawyer who understands what that means. I also think it's important to engage with attorneys that are interested in having a long-term relationship with you. And I think it's important on the flip of that as well. It's important for you to want to have a long-term relationship with your attorney, because at the end of the day, that's how you really can maximize value from that relationship, right? Someone who's not interested in a long-term relationship with you is going to be looking to make a quick buck. Someone who's interested in a long-term relationship is going to have, lower fees. They're going to kind of want to work with you and figure out a cost that works for you and your business. And again, they're going to be invested, right? I think something that the Towne Law Firm's doing that's really unique is that we've kind of, this is a part of our culture. This is kind of what makes us breathe. This is kind of why we do what we do, because we want to grow with people like you. And unfortunately, every attorney isn't like that, and it's important to find the ones that are. As you kind of engage with attorneys, it's important to be efficient. So 2 quick points on that. One way to be efficient is loop your lawyers into kind of the other people in your network, right? If it's your accountant or your controller, all these other people that kind of help your side hustle or your business kind of live and breathe. It's important for those people to be connected. Another good tip is kind of be conscious in terms of the time that you're taking to communicate with your attorney, right? Again, I'm interested in building long-term relationships, so we don't nickel and dime people. That being said, if you have a team, for example, make sure you're all on the same page before you kind of reach out to your attorney. Or if there's kind of a conflict between, internally, pinpoint it, flag it for your attorney, and then kind of circle back amongst yourselves, as opposed to having, a 2-hour phone conversation where you guys are kind of arguing or figuring something out while the attorney is on the phone with you. I want to quickly go over kind of 3 different stages that I think a lot of startups and small business find themselves in, and different legal issues and solutions that are unique to each particular stage. So as I'll phrase it, there's the ideation phase, the concepting phase, and then the commitment phase. So ideation is, literally, it's late at night and the light bulb goes off, and, everything that's built around that, right? So you have an idea for a product or a service that's scalable. You've taken a little bit of time to figure out how to monetize that, right? You need to have some sort of revenue model. And you have a vague but kind of not really ironed out idea of who your team is going to be. Is it just going to be you? Are you going to bring on other partners? Are you going to have employees? The next stage is concepting. It's basically ironing out everything that we kind of just talked about, making sure that you have a timeline. So 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, having concrete goals for each of those phases. At this phase, you probably have a better sense of who your team is. You've kind of identified the skill sets that are needed to accomplish your goals, and you've identified specific people to fill those needs. And then the last stage that I'm going to talk about today is the commitment phase. So at this point, you either have the ability to develop what's called a minimum viable product, basically something that you can take to market, but kind of the most minimum form of that. You have that ability to take your product to market, or maybe you already have, and you've fully committed both yourself and the rest of the team members to your goals, which is to say you have a signed shareholder agreement, or kind of whatever other founding document you might need based upon what type of business entity you select. So now I'll kind of dive in just a little bit more deeply into each of those phases. So the ideation phase, the first stage, you want to think about what business structure you want. So everybody kind of wants an LLC. They think that it's the best thing, and that it may be the case that an LLC is what's best for you. But there are other options out there: corporations, partnerships. Each one has different liability implications, different tax implications. If you eventually want to grow your company and you want to attract capital, an LLC for various reasons may not be the best choice for you. And so, kind of digging more deeply into that is an example of something where, I'm going to ask Dan and Cheryl to share my information. And if you guys want to learn more, I'd be happy to kind of have a one-on-one conversation about that to make sure that the services we're providing with you guys are appropriately personalized. Another thing that you're going to want to do specifically in the ideation phase, and it sounds like some of our attendees, are already doing this, is you're going to want to review potential IP solutions that you're going to need: trademarks, patents, design rights, copyrights. Moving on to the next phase, the concepting phase. So this is where you kind of want to, again, just move the ball forward for everything we've been talking about. So you're going to want to select a business entity structure. You're going to want to implement it. You're going to want to start negotiating your founding documents. And you're going to want to make sure that the names that you're using are available for your use before you really start to invest value in them. And then the last phase, commitment, again, you're going to want to execute your kind of organizational documents. You're going to want to implement whatever intellectual property solutions you've strategized with your attorney. And you're going to want to kind of formalize your engagement with third parties, whether that's employees, consultants, software developers, insurers, even consumers. For example, if you have a website, it's important to make sure that your terms and conditions are kind of properly tailored to your individual business goals. Just going through my notes here, I think that's more or less everything I wanted to talk about. Maybe just a couple closing points. You want to be proactive, which is to say, as you're kind of going through the initial stages of forming your business or scaling your business, you always want to be thinking, what's the next step? What's 2 steps ahead? What's 3 steps ahead? Because as you move into each phase, you don't want to be, having to change your business structure or your existing agreements. You want to have an attorney who's able to help you see down the road, and you're going to want to create structures and documents that you can grow into. Because at the end of the day, that kind of shields you from risk and it saves you money. And, if you have an attorney who understands what it's like to own and operate a small business, they're going to be helping you save money at the end of the day. I think we'll stop there. And thank you for listening and for tuning in. And I guess I'll leave it to Dan and Cheryl to maybe moderate and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'd like to just drive home a couple points you brought up from my experience. So there are probably hundreds of nonprofit groups in the capital region that are always looking for volunteers. So if you're looking to make connections that you wouldn't normally otherwise make, look around at nonprofit people who are looking for volunteers. And in order to really get a deep dive and to really connect with those organizations, the more volunteer, you can learn more about how they work, and that will open you up to getting spots on, running for board of directors or executive committees, or getting onto just other general committees. And that's a great way to grow your network. And asking for help, that's a huge point. A lot of times I've found, even if I already know something, but I want to make a better connection with a person. I might say, say it's a machine tool in our basement and there's a new member who is an experienced machinist. I might ask them, hey, can you help walk me through this tricky setup? Even if I already know how to do it, then that will give me some time to, spend some time with this person and, learn more about what makes them tick. So yeah, asking for help is a great suggestion. And making connections amongst other people, it not only is it useful and karma will help you out in the long run, but it feels really good, when I can have two people that I know that don't know each other, but I know that they can solve each other's problems. That feels really good when you're able to help people out like that. And yeah, it definitely does help you out in the future. So with that, if anyone has any questions, please bring them in the chat. I saw Mr. Lobsinger had one early on. What are some simple, small goals or steps that our makers, innovators, and entrepreneurs can do to get them comfortable with networking?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think my recommendation would be to join, an existing community. Find your tech valley. Maybe it is Tech Valley or it's something else, but kind of find an equivalent and just dive in. Right? Because what you're doing is you're surrounding yourself with other people like you, or who are kind of, at minimum, they've already decided that they're interested in meeting other people. And, maybe it's something they're comfortable with, in which case you can learn from them, right? How do you get comfortable interacting with other people like that? Or maybe it's new to them too. And, it's kind of nice to, and easier and more effective to, kind of put yourself out there when other people are doing the same thing. So I'd recommend kind of finding your tech valley and just diving in.
Okay, we got one more in the chat from Jack D. I've established a very trustworthy and reliable relationship with my IP lawyer. During the recent final drafting stages, there's been no communication. It's been a few weeks, which is very unusual. How do I know whether to push, send more emails, call the office, or have patience?
Yeah, I guess to give specific advice, I'd need to know a little bit more, and I'm happy to talk more offline about that. But I'll just say right now, I think communication's important. That being said, you never really know kind of what's going on with kind of somebody else's life. But if you have kind of legal needs, you have deadlines, and those deadlines are kind of being blown through, that's problematic. But I'm happy to talk more kind of one-on-one with Jack about that.
Calling out, but that is definitely just a tricky thing in general, knowing when to push and when you're being too overbearing, because I've definitely seen that with a couple people who have, especially if you're starting a business for the first time, you're starting to work with vendors and trying to build up those relationships. If you are calling a vendor every day with questions or demands or changing your mind, they're going to write you off pretty quick and put you at the bottom of the list of people to talk to, because while there is the saying the customer is always right, if you try to be right all the time, you're not always going to get the customer service that you might be demanding. That is definitely something to be mindful of.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Dan. And just to kind of follow up on that and make a more broad point, one of the things you can do is, whether it's with an attorney or a vendor, if you have a kind of, instead of pinging them every time you have a question, for example, maybe collect your questions. And if they're not super time sensitive, you kind of communicate with them and you say, hey, here are the 5 things I'm thinking about right now. Can we walk through them? That might be a kind of more effective way to get what you're looking for.
Absolutely. That's actually exactly what we do in our incubator with our engineer in residence. When we have, engineer working with an entrepreneur for the first time, they'll usually recommend, hey, I'll give you my time, but in 1 hour blocks. So instead of hitting me up with an email every day, yeah, collect them and we'll sit down for an hour and we'll have a good solid discussion. Another question from Cheryl, on the legal end, what's the value add of working with a lawyer to create your company entity versus DIY?
Yeah, it's a great question. You definitely can create your own entity kind of on your own. The reason why I don't recommend it is because several reasons. There are certain kind of sneaky requirements that, for example, New York State and other states have, where, depending on your entity formation type, you may have publishing requirements, filing requirements. You may think that just because you're a solo operator, you don't need to do certain things like, for example, keep meeting minutes or kind of have an annual meeting. But depending on your business type, if you want to be kind of appropriately shielded from liability, in fact, that may be something that you have to do. And so because small business owners and everybody really, right, you don't know what you don't know, as the saying goes, we can kind of help you see what it is that you don't know. And then I'll also just kind of reiterate the point where you may be able to find advice online that tells you kind of what you need in the moment. It's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to get somebody who will kind of take the time to understand what your long-term goals are and create an entity or a kind of more broad organizational structure, again, that you can grow into that's sustainable and efficient long-term.
Thank you. I've noticed that it often takes more time in the long run to do it yourself than to pay a professional. For instance, if you publish your legal name and you include a comma between your name and LLC versus in your registration documents, they'll send you back your documents if they don't match. And just a mere comma can completely waste, like a couple of months of your time. So I'm sure that you have tactics that you use that the common person creating their business entity is unaware of. And yeah, time is money. So you might as well pay a professional to do it.
Absolutely. And it's kind of more time on the back end, and sometimes worse than that, it's significantly kind of higher legal costs on the back end. And sometimes things happen that you can't fix. Again, and then maybe this is where I'll kind of say, I invite each and every one of you to reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation about legal solutions that the Towne Law Firm offers, networking, really just anything in general. It's, kind of my passion is learning about small business owners and operators and enthusiasts in the capital region. And so, if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them one-on-one, and maybe we could even do a follow-up presentation, right? Kind of dive a little bit more deeply into specific legal solutions.
All right, so we're down to the last 10 minutes or so here. If anyone else has anything they want to bring up, talk about, feel free to unmute. Just kind of open the floor up here.
I feel like Sam Wexler must have something to say. Sam.
No, I have nothing, Cheryl. Nah, I don't really have much to say. I've started a few businesses, and I've done it both ways. I've done it myself, and I've done it through a lawyer, and I've done it through LegalZoom. So it depends if you have time and if you have what your constraints are.
Can you speak, is there any, try not to be too specific, any difference between like international connections or your network rather than your local network? Because for me, so networking was terrifying and reaching out to suppliers was terrifying. And then like, it almost seems too easy. Like, they're getting back to me, they're answering all my questions. So was it just this fear I had in my head, or should I be concerned with, I don't know. Yeah. What should I be concerned with? Any differences?
I mean, if you're making international contacts that kind of have a track record and are reputable, and you're enjoying communicating with them and they're helping you accomplish your goals, that sounds great. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, yeah, getting over that, like that fear hump of contacting people that you had mentioned, that's totally a real thing, and that's something a lot of people deal with. Even something as small as going to the metal shop that's in Albany that they just sell steel. If you've never, ordered steel before and you don't know what all the specific words mean, what's an angle bracket versus angle iron versus hot rolled, cold rolled, that's very intimidating. And many people think that if they go into a place like that and they don't know the lingo, they're not familiar with things, that they're going to be laughed at or be humiliated. But no, these people, they want to sell you stuff. They want to get you in and out as fast as possible. So while some people might be gruff and maybe might not be the nicest customer service people, they want to help you out and they want to sell you things. So that's a fear you have to face and put some effort into, to just get over, send an email, walk in the door, say hello.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think if we're not practiced at kind of that type of engagement, there's a fear, kind of very real. And I've felt it myself, where it's like, it feels like you're bothering someone. But the vast majority of people, it's like, worst case scenario, you reach out to them, they don't get back to you, they don't care, right? It's like, you're not bothering them, they just don't care. And the vast majority of people will get back to you, and they do care. Social interaction, it's a muscle, right? The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets.
And I have one more, I guess no one else. For the room, is emails enough in this age of COVID? Is emails enough, or do we need phone calls? Do we need meeting in person for networking and connecting? Or can you just build that trust off Zoom alone?
I think it probably varies person to person. Personally, I really like meeting with people. And so, I'm kind of at a point where as long as people are wearing masks and we're kind of appropriately socially distanced, I kind of almost prefer to meet with people. That being said, right, it's a crazy time, and I completely understand that some people prefer not to meet in person. And I do think if that's the case, there is something kind of special about getting FaceTime, even if it's virtual. There's, I don't know, something very human about seeing someone's face and how they speak, and that helps me learn kind of more who they are and what they're looking to accomplish, as opposed to just, for example, communicating via email.
It's almost like a pyramid of effort, sort of an email is very, low risk, easy to do. Phone calls, maybe the next level up. And then you can have the Zoom meeting, takes a little bit more time, a little more effort. And then the meeting in person is probably the most time invested thing. So yeah, I think they all have their points, certainly. But trying, start from one end and working the way up and realizing when one is more, if the connection is more valuable, try to do a more valuable.
Yep.
Josh, do you have any books or resources you recommend? I got here a little bit late, so sorry if I
Yeah,
missed
that's
anything.
a fantastic question. I definitely do. Let me think about it. If you don't mind, I put my email in the group chat. I can put it again. And if you don't mind shooting me an email, I can give you some recommendations. There we go.
All right, well, it is 12:57. We're coming up on the hour here. I'd like to thank everyone for coming in. Thank you very much for Josh for putting together this presentation and answering all our questions.